If you're anything like me, you're in the midst of chasing greatness. You're seeking another level in your life or your relationships or your finances or your career or your health. And you're like, man, I got to get to the next level. Greatness is not about money. Greatness is not about fame. Greatness is not about the big house. It's about that feeling. It's about that emotion that we all crave and want to say, I build my potential. And the last I checked, you and I weren't there yet. There's another level that we've got to attain to do that. It's becoming the best version of myself. It's about how good can I become? I know you might be on the bottom of the barrel, you might be at the top of the mountain. Wherever you are, there's always another level. It's time to go out and be great today. Welcome back to another episode of the Todd Durkin Impact Show. And this is continuing the series called Chasing Greatness. And before I get started into today's episode, I want to say thank you for all the amazing comments and shares from last week's episode on chasing greatness and what it's all about, because here's what I do know, that each and every one of you who are listening in right now, as you're out for your walk, you jog, you run, you work out, you're going to school, you're at work, and you're listening to today's show, is you're chasing greatness too. You're trying to tap into your potential. You're trying to get after. You're trying to overcome adversity, setbacks, things in your life. And last week we talked about that and you shared it. I heard your comments. I saw your DMs. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Because I'll tell you what, I love being in this journey with you. I consider you and my podcast family. I reveal a lot. I share a lot. I open up conversations a lot. And as a matter of fact, today's episode is with a very close friend, someone who I've worked closely with for over 20 years. His name is Drew Brees. And Drew is the record-setting future Hall of Fame quarterback from the San Diego Chargers, and then, of course, the New Orleans Saints, where he won a Super Bowl and an MVP with the Saints, played for 20 years at a high level. And when we talk about the GOAT, the greatest of all time, certainly Drew Brees' name is mentioned as one of the greats of all time as well. I've had the opportunity to train Drew for 20 years, literally 20 years, pretty much his entire career. But the one thing I've learned about Drew is he's much more than just a football player. And this latest season of his life as a commentator for NBC with Notre Dame football, Sunday Night Football, and all that he does in the community and as a parent, we talk about chasing greatness. I wanted to get Drew on today's episode to talk about chasing greatness in a brand new career. He's a rookie in a lot of ways in the broadcasting realm, and he's in a new chapter in a transition. Is anyone else out there in a transition in life? They've had a change in their careers and life. And that's why I wanted to have Drew in today. So we're going to talk about these things with Drew in his career as a football player, as now a commentator, what he likes, what he doesn't like, the things he loves most about life now, the hardest things about his life right now as well. So without further ado, let's go out to my good friend, Drew Brees, and talk about chasing greatness. Welcome back to the Todd Durkin Impact Show. We are talking impact and we're talking chasing greatness. We've been on this series lately about chasing greatness and what it takes. So I had to corral my man, Drew Brees, today. Drew is in the house. Drew, welcome back to the show.
It's great to be back on the show, TD.
Man, just trained here this morning and got stretched, and now we're doing a little podcast episode.
I feel great.
Man, chasing greatness. You're chasing a new greatness these days. For what, 20 something years you were on the field, on the gridiron, chasing greatness, and now you've got some new things. Tell us about your latest interests and how you're chasing greatness in a brand new field. What is that like now?
Yeah, it's crazy because for 20 years I felt like I refined that process,
yes,
right, and that preparation to prepare each and every day to be the very best at my craft, right, at the quarterback position for my team. And then, upon retirement, I knew I wasn't really retiring. That was really probably a bad word. It was really just stepping away from being a football player and on to taking on about 1,000 new things in the next chapter, right? And so that's kind of where I'm at. I'm still in that transitional phase. I did worked for NBC last year during the fall, and felt like I was totally thrown into the fire, kind of taking on about 4 new roles, which number 1, I broadcasted college games. Number 2, I broadcasted NFL games. Number 3, I was in studio for the biggest pregame show in the country, which is Football Night in America. So right before Sunday Night Football. Right. And then I was in the stadium doing basically like just kind of on the fly, no set, just real free flowing, pregame, halftime and postgame shows. And then a 5-hour Super Bowl pregame show, which is, kind of a rare thing. So all of these things kind of thrown into about a 4-month period of time, it made for kind of really hectic, crazy
been
time.
Relaxing for you.
Yeah, very, very, very relaxing.
You've been hanging out on the beach and doing nothing. And that commitment was pretty much from a Thursday to almost a Tuesday, correct?
Yeah, it was. It required me to travel 26 consecutive weekends during the fall, which was pretty insane, probably a bit more than expected. But at the same time, that's the job.
So folks know it was Notre Dame. Then you would go fly to Connecticut.
Yeah, which is where NBC Studios.
Then fly back to San Diego. And hence, at the same time, many times you would begrudgingly have to miss even the kids' games. Right, when you're away. Did you ever, in your new role, have jitters or you're nervous first time doing this new role of either play-by-play for Notre Dame or going into studio? What was that like? You're almost a rookie. The rookie mentality was back.
I was totally a rookie. Now I was with a great group of people. Mike Tirico was kind of he was my guy in the booth. He was our play-by-play guy, and I was doing the color. And so you talk about a great mentorship and just coaching me every step of the way. And he is probably the most talented guy in the industry. What his role and responsibilities are across all kinds of sport. And literally, like, one day he's broadcasting a Notre Dame game. The next day he's going to do an NFL game. The next day he's broadcasting golf, Olympics. Right? I mean, Olympics. Yeah. I mean, it's amazing, this guy's schedule and kind of his range. But you talk about the best in class and the very best. So I had a chance to learn from the very best and get his guidance and mentorship on a daily basis, which was great.
That Tirico taught you? Like if there was a universal principle that could be shared with our listeners, like what would be something that Mike Tirico said, hey, Drew, in order to be a great commentator or play-by-play guy, you got to do this? Yeah,
it's, so much of what you hear when you're learning is don't do this, don't do that, don't say this, don't speculate, don't, so it's a lot of don'ts, right? And so the biggest challenge for me on any given game, broadcasting, was going into it with not too many swing thoughts, so to speak, right? Yeah. We've all played golf when we've sat there, we've taken a lesson, or we've received about 5 different swing thoughts before the round, and then we go out there and our minds just scrambled and we play terrible, right? It's the last thing you want going into the booth. So there was an ease and a presence that he had, and so much of what he said to me was, number one, be yourself. There is nobody who knows this game as well as you. There's no one that has the perspective that you have, having played 20 years in the NFL. So for you giving us a glimpse as to the way that a quarterback sees the game, processes the game, the things that you're looking at, the situations that you're preparing for. It's really just a conversation. It's really a 3-hour conversation that you're having someone with in their living room, talking about the football game that we're all watching.
Absolutely.
And so that really put things in perspective in a lot of ways. And allowed me to relax and just have fun.
How many weeks in did it feel like that you could start to flow?
It was definitely a few. I felt like three or four games in, I really felt like I had found my rhythm.
Yeah.
I would definitely say this with broadcasting. There's a formula to it. A lot of people think, like that's easy. You're just talking football, right? You're just observing what's happening in front of you during the game. But what you don't realize is that in this, 3-hour, period of time, there's a ton of dead time, right? There's a ton of times where it's really slow during the game. And in many cases, like you have to manufacture conversation or topics. And so in many cases, I would go into a game, and I learned this through the process, was I would sit there and have 20 different topics that I had written down, that I had studied, that I had prepared for during the week. And I'm just waiting for that opportunity to be able to bring up one of those topics, So you're watching a game and there's 3 run plays in a row and it's just kind of boring. And right, you're looking for something to talk about. Well, man, whether it's the running back or whether it's one of the linemen who's blocking or whether it's one of the defensive players, like the minute you kind of get a glimpse of one of these guys that's in on this play, I'm going to my sheet and it's like, you know what? I had a great conversation with this guy this week in that production meeting. He said some really cool stuff. I'm going to bring it up because, man, I want to make this guy a topic of conversation, something America doesn't know about, this guy's charitable work or this guy, his upbringing and a story from his upbringing that's allowed him to be out there on the field today, or something about his family or something about his major, or, it could be any number of things, but.
So how much did you prepare for every game?
Oh, so
watching film, production meetings.
Yeah. Look, if you want to be great at anything, it takes a lot of time and preparation. And I would say hours upon hours. While my kids were at school, I was sitting there pulling up film, watching film, studying players, just like as if I was playing the game. Because a lot of my commentary was, hey, it's third down. And boom, I get the John Madden telestrator going,
Yep.
And I'm circling, here's my tight end matchup on this strong safety. Because as I've watched film this week, this is the matchup. If I'm playing quarterback for Notre Dame, I like, tight end Michael Mayer on whoever this stiff is trying to cover him in this game. You know what I'm saying? So it's things like that.
So hours upon hours.
But then the production meetings is where you really get a chance to know the players, know the coaches. And
did you have a preference between calling a game at like a Notre Dame versus being in studio? And just being like the NBC Sunday Night Football?
Yeah, I really liked broadcasting games because to me that was very much like the preparation of playing a game. I went through a lot of the same processes I did when I was studying film to attack an opponent. Yep. That's basically the mindset that I went into it with, even from a broadcaster's perspective. I wanted to anticipate how this offense was going to attack this defense or vice versa. Studio was a totally different muscle because whereas broadcasting was a 3-hour conversation in someone's living room, studio was 2 sentences and out. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like make your point, or as they would say, throw your punch and get out.
Wow.
And so you had very limited time. Yeah. And there were some crazy moments too with that where, you've outlined the show, right? And it's a scripted show. And yet we start that show before certain games have ended. So the 4:30 time slot, which is typically some of the bigger games on Sundays, those games don't end until 7:30, 7:45. We start our game at 7. So when we get into the back half of the show, we haven't had a chance to really circle up and talk about our points and how they might, marry up with one another. It's literally just, hey, we're back on air 10 seconds. And, oh, by the way, Cowboys beat the Niners in overtime. And you're kind of referencing, okay, well, what happened up until that point? You might get a chance to see a highlight or two, but then it's all right. Like, I want to make a point about Dak because, in that first half of the game, he was really the reason that they were able to, kind of have that lead and win that game. So you're just very quickly having a point.
Or the other way, you had a thunderstorm game this year where there was a 40-minute delay. You had to come up with stuff for 40 minutes.
Yeah. No,
I'm like, Drew, you're doing a great job.
It was like an hour and a half. It was like an hour and a half. Yeah. It was the Kansas City Buffalo day.
I remember that.
Yeah. Exactly. So same thing. It's like, all right, what topics can we cover? And you got to be prepared for it.
So they talk about one of the hardest things for a professional athlete to do is to transition into another career. What was the hardest part for you transitioning from football, which was, almost 35 years of your life practically, into a new career, transition?
So the towards the end of my football career, I felt like from a mental perspective, my knowledge of the game, my knowledge of my process, my knowledge of the opponent and the things that I would see and my reactions to those things was like at the highest level. Mm-hmm. And so really the battle for me towards the end of my career was like the physical, right? Is like week to week, just getting your body ready to get out there and play and be able to do all the things that you need to do to perform. So you go from feeling like mentally, emotionally, you are so well prepared. You know the game so well. There's nothing you're going to see that you don't have a plan for. Like you talk about just, being at this optimum level of efficiency. Yep. And then you go to something that you don't know at all. where you're thinking your way through at every step. You've got all these swing thoughts, so to speak. Like it was like going back to square one. It was like being a rookie again and scrambling just to catch up with everybody else.
But in some ways, isn't that invigorating? That exciting that it's a new skill that you have to learn because people think you're natural, and although you have natural abilities to do that, you also still have if you want to be great at it, you've got to practice, you got to watch film, you've got to do the things. Wasn't there a part that was invigorating too?
Yeah. There is something to trial by fire. And I don't know what like a doctor would say or some sort of like brain specialist in regards to like what happens in your mind or with your brain when you are put into really tense situations or like traumatic situations and you have to immediately like just kind of think on your feet and perform in those. Like there's a ton of growth that occurs in those moments that not only develops confidence, but I think truly like develops a skill set. Like, the whole, myelin thing around the nerves, myelin right? Sheets. Like just, that's what I'm saying. Like you just start to develop this muscle memory and like this skill set. There is something about just trial by fire and just kind of like being thrown in the moment, figuring it out, like having to survive, not having a script and just like having to do it.
That's
right. I mean, there is something to that.
Call an audible and go. You remember our old training partner, Derek Smith, used to train with us. Derek Smith said something that you just alluded to. I'll never forget this. It was probably, 10 years into our training. And Derek said, when you're young, your body's beautiful and your brain is mush. But when you become older, your brain becomes beautiful and your body becomes mush. And peak performance happens somewhere in between. And I actually heard that. I'm like, that's a brilliant statement.
Yeah.
Because you hear about it all the time as you get into your 30s and you're playing, you have so much experience and wisdom, but your body doesn't always marry up to what you think on that. And the longer you can maintain peak performance, I'll never forget that from Derek Smith, who, man, he trained with us for a long time, but it doesn't matter if it's in football or in broadcasting or as an attorney, as a teacher, as a doctor, as a coach, all of these things are important.
Well, and we talked about this towards the end of my career as we were training. Was I had this mentality of how do I prolong my prime, right? So you call that prime that kind of point where it's beautiful on both sides, right? Body and mind. How can you just like keep pushing that? Because your mind's going to continue to gain wisdom and experience, and the body's and Father Time's going to want to try to beat you down, and yet like how do you maintain that?
DB, what would you say, when you talk about greatness, how would you define greatness?
Well, typically greatness is equated to some level of accomplishment, right? But to me, greatness is when mental, emotional, physical all comes together for that accomplishment. And it's really a state of being. It's a state of mind. I would really kind of put it into a bunch of different descriptions. Like number one, it's a process. Like it is. We are in a results-driven world where we are in results-driven businesses, right? Where so much of how you are measured is based on wins and losses. Look, I've met people that have accomplished great things, but they're miserable. Right? So you can't just say that it's about accomplishing great things. No, it's not. Like I think it's accomplishing those things, but it's how you accomplish it. It's the standards that you set for yourself on your way to accomplishing those things. It's those things that you create in your life as non-negotiables to get to those things. Like I know for me, when I was playing football, I knew this. I had to wake up every morning and I got my first cup of coffee and I would grab the Bible and I would get in the Word for 20 minutes to start every day. And if I didn't do that, like that set the foundation for my day. If I wasn't able to do that for whatever, like that kind of messed up my whole day.
Yep.
Like, and I wasn't myself. And then at the end of the day, I had to be home by 7:00 so that I could read my kids a book and tuck them into bed. And if I couldn't do that, like that kind of ruined my day, right?
Bookend
like
your
that
days. Bookend the days.
So you book in the days with these non-negotiables, right? And then everything in between is kind of chaos, right? And you're trying to order that chaos, but you certainly have your routine, but you're getting pulled in all kinds of different directions, but you certainly know what you need to accomplish. And there's this sense of urgency to accomplish it because I got this finite amount of time. I got to get it done because I got to get home at 7 to tuck my kids in bed, right? Read them a book. And that's a non-negotiable, right? So again, it's this mental, emotional, physical state of how do we get from here to accomplishing this goal, but I'm going to do it the right way. I'm going to do it with my process. I've set a standard for myself that I'm going to adhere to, and I've established these non-negotiables that are going to get me there. And you do that day after day, that creates consistency, which to me is another huge element of greatness, is consistency. Can you get up each and every day and commit yourself to that?
Yeah, whether that's working out or what you're eating, or if there's a habit. We talk about habits all the time on the pod, about what are your habits on that. Question for you, now that your career has changed, are you still doing those non-negotiables? Or have you found a new routine that's working for you? Yeah,
I still start my day with a cup of coffee and the Bible. But my kids aren't as young as they were back then, right? A lot of it's trying to wrangle them to get them to sleep. But no, it's still my non-negotiable this past off season, right when I retired, was if at any moment, no matter what I was doing, one of my kids said, "Dad, will you do this with me?" It was a drop, whatever it was. I don't care what it was, on the phone, like taking care of an important whatever. I'm going to put it down and I'm going to do it with my kids. And like that was the greatest thing ever, because I got so much quality time with them as a result of that. And it was never like, hang on. It was just immediately like, yes, we're going to do that, especially my daughter.
Where is Drew Brees chasing greatness these days?
That's a good question. I think I am still discovering what that's going to be. I think the one thing that I did was when I did retire from football, man, I went right into the broadcasting thing, right? And so it was immediately just trying to organize that chaos, right, and figure out that path and that process. And it was kind of a mad scramble there for a while. Right now, as we sit here, like this is kind of the time where I've been able to take a breath and really try to assess and figure out what's next. And honestly, this is the first time in my life where I kind of sit here and say, I really don't have to do anything like right now. Like I can just take a breath, I can reflect, I can reassess, and just spend time with my wife, spend time with my kids, coach ball, and just let it come to me for once. And so instead of just saying yes to a bunch of things, which I have a tendency to do,
yes, you do.
I have the opportunity to just be very selective. And I think that's where I'm at as we sit here right now.
Is that uncomfortable or is that good?
It was uncomfortable until a few weeks ago when I chose to really embrace that.
Because probably Brittany was like, you better get your mind right. You better change your things.
Well, no, she knows my personality, right? Like she feels me getting antsy in the kitchen or something like that. If like I haven't had a chance to work out that day or I got stuck on the phone, whatever it was, and she'd be like, go for a bike ride, right? Like she'll look at me and be like, you're kind of driving me nuts here. Like go for a bike ride, or, take the kids, take them to the driving range or do something, right? So she kind of knows when I get like, I am someone who wants to be productive, and I am active. Like and it's hard for me just to kind of sit still and just relax unless I feel like I've earned it, right? But I just feel like there's too many things to do and too little time.
So if someone who's listening right now believes in themselves that there's another level of greatness inside of them, what would you say to them on how to discover the greatness that's there, but they just can't put a finger on it, how to get it?
It's hard. It's hard not to get overwhelmed. Right. When you feel like, you're running out of time, or like, gosh, there's just so much to do and so little time, or like, I want to, so I guess I'll kind of relate maybe to just like what I went through with this past fall, right? Where, man, I'm trying to be great at something, but I recognize that I'm just getting started.
That's right.
Right. And I know this is going to take some time. Right. I want to be patient, but that's just not my personality with this. Like, man, I want to go get it. Right. I kind of got to the point where, man, I reached a moment where I felt like I was a little bit of like paralysis by analysis at one point during this process where, man, I had so many things in my mind that when I got up there, I felt like I was thinking more about the don't do this, don't do that, as opposed to just flowing. Just flow, man. Just be yourself, right? And so I kind of reached a point where I was like, you know what? Like, just, man, get rid of all this stuff. Like each time out, just focus on one element that you're really going to try to be good at, right? So like this next game, man, just pick a couple of these players that you really, really want to like go deep on and talk about and describe, and make sure that you find a way to get your points across about these guys, right? Like that is your sole focus. So once I kind of went through that, it was like, okay, I know I can do that and I know how to do it, right? So that's one element of my game. Okay, this next week, man, let's really focus on, situational football. So man, whenever we get to third down and red zone and 2 minute, like, man, just be like locked in and so good in those situations. Like that's the emphasis this week, And so then all of a sudden you put a few of these together, and then it's like, okay, the experiences from the previous ones where you just kind of locked in and focused on that one thing. Now all of a sudden it's all coming together to being a complete performance, right? So it's like, I would say like finding your complete performance. Yep. Like how do you get to your complete performance? Well, let's just lock in on maybe one of these things at a time and just like find that mastery in that, or just that confidence to know like, all right, I can do that.
And then stack wins.
And then you stack wins.
You've talked about that a lot. Drew, one of the things I know that you take great pride in as a dad and as a husband, you have a lot of different roles. As a father, as what will be a future Hall of Famer, obviously broadcasting, you have business interests. You do the best job compartmentalizing life. What's the secret? How do you do it? Because you have a lot going on. You allude to that, but there's a lot of people who feel that overwhelm that you just shared. Yeah. How do you compartmentalize your life?
Honestly, because part of my prayer every morning is that God would help me stay in the moment. Stay in the moment. Because you're right. I do at times, I felt at times that I get in this place where I do have so many things going on that it's hard not to think about, what's coming up in a few hours or tomorrow. That's like that big thing when I'm, trying to just have a little bit of that time with my kids. Right. Like, and so I think I've learned just by like getting mad at myself and saying, no, like you be present, man, like lock in on this one thing for now. And then when the hours passed, then you go to this and now it's locking in on this. So it's like truly staying in the moment with what you're doing. Cause that's how you're going to enjoy it the most too. And I find there's a mental clarity that comes when I'm able not like to step away from thinking about something for a while, And so like for some people it's like meditation, like, man, I need that 20 minutes just to, like, I love power naps. I mean, ask my wife.
You're the king of it.
I can sleep anywhere, anytime for like 12 minutes at a time.
Yeah.
Like just,
Where are you having the most fun these days?
Man, I love watching my kids play ball. Yeah. That's the best.
Okay. So I got to ask you, when you're watching your kids play ball, are you ever that dad that gets so frustrated that you don't see out of them what you want out of them? Yeah.
Yes. And I have to walk.
All you dads are laughing. Like, good question, TD.
Totally. And I have to walk this fine line, right? Because I recognize, and I've heard it from my two older sons, I recognize the pressure that they're under by their dad being a professional athlete, right? And they've like voiced that to me at times, like, Dad, everybody thinks that I should because you know what I'm saying? And like, that's hard. So at times, like I have to like overly, police myself, with my like overzealousness during a game or really you're just competitive, right? Totally. I mean, you're just competitive, right? So like basically what I tell them is, look, I don't care about the result of today, right? All I want to see effort. I want to see great effort. Like it's such a blessing to be able to play, to be able to be with your friends, like to be able to play this sport. And I want to see effort, and I want to see you having fun. Like this is meant to be fun, right? Now there's times where like, I don't want to go to practice. You know, I don't want to. And then I have the conversation about want versus need, right? Yeah. You may not want to, but you need to. And here's why, right? Yeah. So we're in that interesting phase where there's just a lot of good teaching moments in the car.
Yeah. And I love seeing you in that role because we've talked about it now for a long time, having kids of similar ages. But there's no more important role than that as a parent. And it's the hardest role that we all play is, right? We just want to feed into our kids and that. But I love seeing you out there at the ballpark, whether it be lacrosse or baseball or gymnastics and that stuff. Final question. When it comes to the many people who listen to you, whether you're broadcasting or following you as an athlete, what would be one thing that people don't know about you that they wish they did know about you, that you wish they knew about you? Is there something that people don't know about Drew Brees that you wish they knew about you?
I don't know. I mean,
otherwise I'll share one.
So like I'm one of I feel like I'm one of the most just like regular, just ordinary people. Like I like doing the same things a lot. Like I love going, how about this? I love going to the grocery store and picking out what I want for dinner and then immediately going home and cooking it. Like this true, you know, just like one day at a time kind of like I like if you said, would you rather have, you know, use one of these, you know, third-party delivery services to like deliver you food or deliver you groceries, or would you rather? I was like, no, I would rather go to the grocery store, pick out my own vegetables, right? Pick out the meat in the meat section, and then go home and like have this master vision for like the family meal and like whip it up and then like sit down at the table and just like, man, like
I'm sure Brittany loves that too.
Oh, she's like, don't you mess up my kitchen. No, but like that's a, you know, we live in this kind of fast-paced world of all this craziness. Like that's just a very basic thing that makes me really happy.
Drew, thank you. Thank you for your vulnerability today and sharing everything. We talk about chasing greatness. Obviously, you're not even halfway through your life yet. So I think that the second half of your life, we've talked about some of the things that you were doing and creating. Because one thing I don't think everyone knows about you, I was going to share, is you are an ultimate philanthropist. And the things I see you doing, because you never talk about them, not only down in New Orleans or here in San Diego, but throughout the country. Some of the things that you're doing with building schools and hospitals, and that I know the Brees Dream Foundation has contributed tens of millions of dollars countrywide. So thank you for just being that man that when I talk about impact, you're creating impact every single day, and you never give yourself enough credit for that because you're always thinking about, you know, other things. But thank you for who you are and what you do.
Thank you.
Yeah. Guys, remember, continue to follow Drew on NBC, on his social media. And when you see him in the grocery store, leave him alone. And as he picks out his vegetables on that. But DB, thank you. Chasing greatness. My friends, do me a favor. Share today's episode. Make sure you share it with a friend, a colleague, a coworker who's chasing greatness like yourself, because Drew talked about, you know, potential and what it takes to chase greatness as a parent, as an athlete, as a entrepreneur who's looking to create greatness and all on that stuff. DB, any final words?
Man, well,
close us out, baby.
Create an impact. I'm looking at your shirt right now. #impact.
There it is.
Waking up every day, think about how you can make this world a better place.
Yeah. Well, you talked about it. It starts with your morning and evening routine. So, folks, there you have it from the one and only Drew Brees. Remember to continue to train hard, eat right, live inspired, and keep chasing greatness. Man, oh man, I hope you enjoyed today's conversation with the one and only Drew Brees. You know, I talk about many times way in the beginning about this podcast. It was going to keep it real. I was going to keep it authentic. And Drew, as one of my best friends, that was a conversation that if you were just sitting in here and hearing what's working, what's not working, including all the way up to the point where Drew just likes to go to the grocery store and be a regular person, picking out his fruits and vegetables and his night's dinner on that. I hope you gained value in chasing greatness, of what it takes to chase greatness. Because the one thing I'll say is this: in all of the years that I've known Drew, he's never once turned down a request for an autograph. and I've been with him a lot, and never once has he said no to anyone for an autograph request. And who you see and what you hear is who he is as a man of humility, as a man of faith. He's one of the most down-to-earth guys that I know, bar none. So what you heard today is Drew Brees and all that he is doing and working on to try to change the world and make it a greater place. We talk about chasing greatness. I certainly wanted Drew on here to share with you and hopefully impart some wisdom, experience, and hopefully you get a little juiced up about the things that are inside of you that you want to achieve and that you want to do for your family, for your finances, for your health, for your career, whatever it may be, to realize to focus on that process. And when it goes back to all the way to 2005 and 2006, when Drew ripped his shoulder out of his socket and had to overcome that, focusing on the process one day at a time, the real maniacal focus on the here and the now. Drew talked about that, of course, bookending his days in prayer and in being in the moment, really, certainly is of great value and a great episode. If you found value in today's Impact Show episode, do me a favor. Number one, subscribe to the podcast if you are not yet a subscriber so you do not miss one single episode. Also, don't forget, all of these podcasts also are on our YouTube channel. If you're not a subscriber to our YouTube channel, simply hop over to YouTube, search out Todd Durkin, and then follow us on YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you can actually see, let alone hear, all of the great wisdom going out each and every week on the Todd Durkin Impact Show. Don't forget to share today's episode with all of your friends, family, colleagues, and coworkers, people who you want to positively impact as well, so that you can be a light in this world as well. Until next time, remember, train hard, eat right, live inspired, and keep chasing greatness.